So we tell this greatest of all stories with music, and often we tell this story with another story. Here at Christ Presbyterian Church in Advent, these last 4 Sundays, we've been talking about the story that Charles Dickens told, the one he wrote in 1843, A Christmas Carol. It's not a true story, but there's so much truth in it. You know it, of course. It's the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, who Dickens tells us was a clutching, grasping, wrenching, covetous old sinner. Greedy so much so that his own soul, if he had one, lost, buried deep. But he's given a gift, the gift of a visit by 3 ghosts on Christmas Eve, the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, the ghost of Christmas yet to come. And that experience transforms him. His soul wasn't lost after all, just hidden from his own self. And so, I'd like to tell a little bit of a story, with apologies to Charles Dickens. A Christmas Carol revisited. Is it a true story? Probably not, but I'll leave it to you to judge how much truth there is in it. Evan Wheeler left the drugstore in a hurry. He brushed past the man ringing the bell next to the kettle, seeking a contribution for the poor, the refugees, the homeless. There was a time when he would have dropped at least his change into the bucket, but now he didn't even give it a thought. There was always someone in need, always. And frankly, he was a little bit jaded by it all. Besides, Evan had much too much on his mind to think about anyone else. His Christmas shopping finally completed, he barely had time to get home before church. Church. He looked at the cold rain and thought of it as possibly a gift. Maybe Sarah wouldn't want to venture out on such a night. But immediately he knew better. It was Christmas Eve, and Sarah wouldn't be anywhere but church on Christmas Eve. She loved the candlelight, she loved the carols, and the child. Evan, however, he could do without all 3. He didn't have time for faith. Maybe once, but he was older and wiser now. For him, faith was at best sentimental junk food, and at worst, a clever way to separate you from your wallet. He had plenty to worry about himself, really. He was concerned that maybe his job was on the line a bit, and how would faith help with any of that? God never put a meal on his table or paid his medical bills, and all the God talk in the world wouldn't change the fact that this was a world of survival of the fittest. He had to bear this burden all by himself, this worry. Neither Sarah, nor his mother, nor anyone else knew how worried he really was. Evan held tightly to his shopping bag. He'd done all his Christmas shopping in one day. In fact, he had done it all in 20 minutes. Sarah had chosen the gifts for the kids and the gifts for his mother, leaving him only to buy the gift for Sarah. And he had gotten her favorite perfume. He was very pleased with himself, probably because he had forgotten the fact that he had gotten Sarah the same thing last year. When he finally did get home, dinner was on the table, pot roast, his favorite, which Evan noticed but did not mention. Sarah and the kids were already dressed for church, so he wouldn't be getting out of that. As they drove to church, Vanessa and Marty were all excited about being angels in the Christmas pageant, the play, the retelling of the Christmas story that would take part in the service. Well, a cold rain couldn't possibly keep us from church now, Evan thought. The kids, they have a part in the play. He remembered, though, that the pageant took the place of the sermon in the early service. At least I won't have to suffer through that, he thought. Evan actually liked the woman preacher at the church. She was really good. But the male pastor, he was insufferable in the pulpit. And with Evan's luck, it would have been his turn this Christmas. So the kids scurried off to the choir room to get ready for the pageant, while Sarah pulled Evan up to the first couple of rows of seats against his better judgment. He prepared a $1 bill, folding it very carefully so that no one could see the denomination who might happen to be sitting next to him. He wasn't being cheap. He thought he knew that Sarah was overly generous to the church with her own money that she earned from her own job, but still. The carols weren't bad. Evan would never admit that he actually enjoyed singing the Christmas carols. They reminded him of a time when he actually believed something. But now he knew better. Evan smiled to himself in mid-verse of A Little Town of Bethlehem. He thought, it would take a Christmas carol to get me to believe again. Not the Oh Little Town type, though. Rather, the Charles Dickens version. The one with the three spirits of Christmas past and present and future. But no worthy there, Evan thought. He was sure that he would never see a spirit in church. So there's a prayer, another carol, and then it was time for the pageant. The prophet Isaiah thundered out his vision of, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, except the prophet was a 12-year-old who in 6th grade who really hadn't remembered his lines very well, so there wasn't a lot of thunder about it. Then Mary and Joseph appeared from the story in Luke's gospel. The narrator told in a squeaky voice how Joseph had to go from his hometown to be registered in the great census from the Emperor Augustus, and how Mary was expecting a baby, so she had to go along too. And this all of maybe 10 years old walked across the front of the church, Mary all the while adjusting the pillow that was under her robe. Joseph helped Mary on the steps over by the piano toward a painted cardboard door, the Bethlehem Hotel. Joseph's knock was answered by a stocky boy in a bathrobe, the innkeeper. No room, he bellowed. There is no room in the inn. You can stay in the barn if you like. And Mary and Joseph turned away sadly. But the innkeeper wasn't done. No room, he bellowed again, this time turning toward the congregation. There is no room in Evan Wheeler's heart. What? Evan sat up as though he'd stuck his finger in a light socket. His face was flushed. What did that boy say? The innkeeper turned quickly away, closed his cardboard door. Sarah didn't seem to have heard anything. No one seemed surprised or annoyed at this sudden interruption. And the pageant went on as Mary and Joseph headed over to the stable where the manger was. He must have been daydreaming, Evan concluded, because he often did during a sermon. That was the only explanation, but still, the boy's voice echoed in his ears. No room in Evan Wheeler's heart. What on earth might that mean? Well, Mary and Joseph were now settled safely on bales of hay, surrounded by barnyard animals who were actually kids with papier-mâché heads of donkeys and sheep and such, really quite well done. Now though, attention went back to stage left, where shepherds with broom-handle crooks were gathered on the steps keeping watch over their flock of preschoolers wearing gray sweatshirts that had cotton balls stuck all over them. From behind the baptismal font, the angel of the Lord zoomed into view on top of a wheeled stepladder. Not a bad effect in the darkness, really. Fear not, came the delicate voice of this winged creature. Fear not, for I bring you good news of a great joy for all the people. Evan started to look for Vanessa and Marty, knowing that the angel chorus could not be far behind. But instead, he got that sixth sense that something was a little bit out of line. Something was a little bit out of order. And he looked back at the angel of the Lord who had finished her speech, but clearly was not finished yet. Her brown eyes searching the congregation until she found Evan. Fear not, she said again. Fear not, Evan Wheeler. For the second time, he could not believe his ears. And for the second time, neither Sarah nor anyone else seemed aware of this interruption. Fear not. He wasn't afraid of anything, he thought, and then suddenly he was overwhelmed by the fears that he would not let himself feel. The fears that he pushed down every day. Everything from perhaps losing his job, to losing his mother, to really being lost in his marriage. He would have fallen to the floor under the sudden burden of it all if he hadn't been seated in that chair. He almost missed Marty and Vanessa, halos slipping and laughing with delight while they were singing Away in a Manger to the shepherds. And looking at them, he thought to himself, they are growing up so fast, it almost hurts. And that is why, he realized, that is why I hold them at a distance. It's safer that way. Not surprisingly, the pageant was faithful to the original story, and so the angels left. They went off into heaven, leaving the shepherds to decide what are they going to do. Should they follow the angel's advice or not? And it was up to the tallest shepherd, who stood among his friends and said, let us go to Bethlehem and see this thing that the Lord has made known to us. One would have expected this little band of terry-cloth saints to trundle a few steps across the sanctuary to gather at the manger, but no, things were going off script once again. Now it was the tall shepherd looking out into the crowd, and Evan knew whose face he was seeking. And then came his voice. Go and see, Evan Wheeler. Go and see. This time, Evan didn't look to see if anyone else had heard his name. He knew those words were addressed to him and to him alone. How had he gotten to this place in his life? This cynical place. This heartless place. This, what he suddenly saw so very clearly, was a lonely, lonely place. However he had gotten here, Evan knew that it was time for him to go. Time to leave that place and go. To go and see whether there was another life out there waiting for him, a new and a better life. A life that, if you took the shepherd's word for it, just might begin in Bethlehem. The words of the innkeeper, the words of the angel, the words of the shepherd echoed within Evan's mind. No, that doesn't put it quite right. They echoed within Evan's newly rediscovered soul. There's no room in your heart, Evan Wheeler. Fear not, Evan Wheeler. Go and see, Evan. Go and see. Together, all those voices together, there was a message that struck his heart. Was it the children who had spoken? Or was it another voice? Another voice that had called his name. It did not really matter, because Evan said yes. Yes, Evan said silently to the innkeeper, I have closed the door of my heart to the poor and the lonely, who are everywhere and who deserve my help. I have closed the door of my heart even to my own wife, my own children. Yes, Evan said silently to the angel, I am afraid, but my fear of what might happen crushes any gladness in what actually is happening. Yes, he said silently to the shepherd, I must go to Bethlehem and look into the eyes of the Christ child to see the man I once wanted to be, the man I pray I can still become. And then Evan made a promise. He made himself a promise. When I look into the eyes of the Christ child, I'll see the man I will become with God's help. He reached over and took Sarah's hand. And startled, she looked at him and seemed to sense that something was different. She smiled hesitantly but gratefully. And then together they looked up at the angel chorus, now restored to view on the heavenly risers around the manger, where Vanessa and Marty were looking down on the baby with eyes filled with laughter. Joy to the world, the children were singing. And Evan heard the words as if for the first time. Joy to the world, let every heart prepare him room. Every heart. Even Evan's heart. Maybe, Evan thought, maybe there had been a spirit in the church after all. We close with the words slightly edited of our friend Mr. Dickens. Evan Wheeler was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. May that truly be said of us and all of us. God bless us, everyone.